The HOA cop was screaming, clutching his head, staring at the steel-reinforced fence he had just collided with. The very fence Grandpa had warned him about. But if you want to understand how we got here, you have to start at the beginning. And before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching this from? Let's see how far this story travels. I grew up on our family homestead, Cedar Ranch, 300 acres of sprawling pasture, bordered by split-rail fencing, with a red barn that had witnessed generations of Cole family life. Grandpa Henry Cole had lived here since he was 12, and his father before him and his grandfather before that. This land wasn't merely property, it was legacy forged from sweat, blood, and stubborn pride. Grandpa always said, "A fence is a man's handshake. If you respect it, you respect him." For decades, no one ever crossed ours without permission. Everything changed the day Sage Hill Estates appeared over the ridge. A shiny, manicured HOA neighborhood with perfectly trimmed lawns, golf carts replacing cars, and residents who seemed to think that rural property was something you could claim with a vote. Among them, Linda Caraway, the HOA vice president, was the worst. She carried herself as though a clipboard in her hand made her the sheriff of the valley. It began subtly. Letters arrived in the mail. "Your fence is too close to the community boundary. We will inspect your property for safety compliance. Our HOA patrol will verify access rights." Access rights. Cedar Ranch had existed for 8 decades before Sage Hill had even been imagined. Yet Linda insisted that some ancient access road ran through our pasture. A complete fabrication. Grandpa's reply was simple: "There is no easement on my land. Stay off it." That should have ended it. Instead, it unleashed something much worse. The very next morning, as the sun rose over the cedar trees, we heard it crunch. A white SUV marked with HOA Patrol had rammed straight into our fence. The driver reversed, drove away, leaving a 4-foot tear in the rails. Grandpa shook his head, grabbed his tools, and repaired the damage. Day 2 crunch. Same SUV. Same damage. Day 3 crunch. This time Grandpa intercepted the driver. A smirk stretched across the man's face. "Boundary testing," he said. "HOA business. Nothing you can do about it." Grandpa held his gaze, unflinching. "You hit my fence again," he said evenly, "and next time it won't be what you're dealing with." Every morning thereafter, the pattern continued. The SUV's engine roared, tires chewed gravel, metal cracked, rails splintered. Grandpa tried calling the HOA office. Linda Caraway folded her arms and said, "Your fence is illegally placed. If our officer accidentally contacts it during inspection, that's your responsibility." That was the moment Grandpa's patience ended. When we returned to the ranch that afternoon, he stood silently in front of the damaged gate, rubbing his jaw. Then he spoke quietly, "All right. If they want a fence war, they'll get one." And from that moment, the real story began. Grandpa didn't yell. He didn't curse. He didn't even flinch as the 4th attack came. He simply studied the broken rails, jaw set tight, then nodded. "If they want to play demolition derby on my property," he muttered, "let's give them something real to hit." Over the next 2 days, Cedar Ranch transformed into a forge of steel and determination. Grandpa hauled out an old welding rig, untouched since my childhood. Sparks flew from sunrise to sunset as he cut, bent, and welded thick steel reinforcements into the existing wooden fence. We dug trenches 2 feet deep, anchored steel posts in concrete, reinforced the main gate with industrial-grade crossbars hidden behind the visible rails. To the casual observer, it looked like any ordinary ranch gate. To anyone reckless enough to ram it, it was a fortress. Grandpa added one more touch. A small, weatherproof camera, nearly invisible, mounted atop a post. Motion-triggered, night vision enabled, angled perfectly toward the road. "Proof," he said. "If they deny it again, we'll have something they can't argue with." The next morning, as predicted, the familiar roar of the HOA patrol SUV filled the air. Dust clouded the road. The same driver, the same fake cop, puffed up his chest as he approached. He stepped out, smirking. "Let's see if your replacement breaks as easy as the last one." He climbed back into the SUV. Grandpa stood on the porch, hammer over his shoulder, calm as a Sunday morning sermon. The engine revved. Then he floored it. The SUV surged forward, bumper aimed squarely at the gate. Wham! Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Airbags detonated. Steam hissed from the engine. The vehicle bounced backward, coming to rest at a smoking angle. The HOA cop tumbled from the cab, clutching his head, screaming. Grandpa didn't move. Just rested the hammer on his shoulder. "Calm as a Sunday sermon," he said. And indeed, the fence had spoken louder than words ever could. The hidden camera had recorded every second, and it wasn't long before the sheriff arrived. Sheriff Colton Dawes had already warned Grandpa, "Call me the second they show up again. I'm tired of these HOA idiots thinking laws stop at their mailbox." Minutes later, the sheriff's truck rolled in. Lights flashing, engine quiet. He stepped out, took in the wrecked SUV, and the dazed driver clutching his head. "Looks like your fence talked louder than my warnings," he said. Grandpa simply crossed his arms, satisfied. The sheriff crouched beside the groaning man. "Name?" he asked. "Travis," he whimpered. "I was told to check the boundary." "Save it," the sheriff said. "You ram private property. That's felony destruction and impersonating law enforcement." I handed over the SD card from the hidden camera. Within moments, the pattern played out on the sheriff's tablet. Daily trespasses, repeated collisions, blatant disregard for private property, and finally today's spectacular crash. Travis broke quickly. "It was Linda," he confessed. "The HOA VP. She told me to apply pressure until the owners cooperated." By sunset, deputies had arrived at Sage Hill Estates. Linda Caraway was arrested on her porch, still clutching her clipboard, shouting about authority as neighbors filmed her. She faced conspiracy to commit property damage, harassment, filing false HOA authority, 9 months in county jail, $18,000 in fines, and permanent removal from the HOA board. Travis was charged with felony property destruction, impersonating law enforcement, reckless endangerment, 14 months in state jail, $22,500 restitution, and loss of his vehicle. Sage Hill's HOA president, blindsided by the chaos, immediately suspended her and called an emergency board meeting. Within 3 days, the HOA voted to dissolve its enforcement branch entirely. No more fake cops, no more intimidation, no more fence wars. Cedarline Ranch was peaceful again. Grandpa stood beside the steel-reinforced fence one last time, running his hand over the smooth top rail. "Give a man a rule," he said, smiling, "and he'll test it. Give him a steel fence and he'll learn it." And that is how a simple fence, welded, anchored, and reinforced with patience and ingenuity, ended a crooked HOA's entire operation. Would you have tried to reason with them or let the fence do the talking? Grandpa didn't argue, he built a lesson they couldn't ignore. And sometimes that's all it takes.